Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today, I'm going to be talking about a reading challenge created by my friend MJ at Reading This Life. And this is the Read 24 in 2024 Banned Book Challenge. Back in February, when I first joined BookTube, MJ had made a video on her reading of Stephen Chbosky's novel, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. MJ had discovered that this book is frequently on the American Library Association list of banned books and also on PEN America's index of school book bans. And she started this challenge to read 24 books in 2024, 24 books from these lists. I was new to BookTube at this time and I joined the challenge. I've made many videos during the past 9 months about the various books that I have read from these lists. So at this time, I have completed 27 books from these two lists, and I have completed the challenge. MJ has also created another group. I'm with the Banned Book Club, and we have an app. We have a group over on the Fable app where we discuss a different book each month. And everyone is invited to join that as well. We are definitely going to be continuing this challenge into 2025, and I think MJ plans to talk about that sometime in the near future. I have had the good fortune of teaching English for almost 40 years in two different school systems. One was, I started my career in a private, independent Catholic school. I taught there for 7 years. It was an enormously progressive school with wonderful curriculum, across the disciplines, and in that time I never saw any books challenged at all. I spent the next 30 plus years in a public school system where parents were very involved in their students' curriculum. I had parents reading books along with me and the class, along with their children. I ran a book group for parents and teachers so that we could talk about contemporary issues that were affecting the lives of our kids. So we were very much working together, families and the school. In that 32-year period, I only saw one book questioned, and that was by a father who didn't want his son to read The Catcher in the Rye because they were uncomfortable with Holden's use of profanity. This father did not go to the school board and ask for the book to be removed. Rather, he asked if I could provide an alternative for his son, which I was happy to do, and I taught an additional novel for his son. And that, in almost 40 years, is the only example that I faced of what would be considered a book challenge. And he wasn't even challenging the teaching of the book. He asked for an alternative. As an aside, there are people who have objected to our talking about book bans, and they have suggested that challenging and removing books from classrooms and libraries doesn't constitute book banning because it doesn't mean that you're destroying the books. It doesn't mean that you're taking the books out on the front lawn and setting them on fire. It simply means that they're not available in schools or in libraries. But the books can still be purchased from bookstores. And that is absolutely true. those books are still available once they've been removed from classrooms and school libraries and public libraries. They can be purchased. I am using the PEN America definition of book challenges and bans, and I'm just going to share what PEN America says. And this is a quotation from PEN America. Today, books are under profound attack in the U.S. They are disappearing from library shelves, being challenged in droves, and being decreed off limits by school boards, legislators, and prison authorities. And everywhere, it is the books that have long fought for a place on the shelf that are being targeted. Books by authors of color, by LGBTQ plus authors, and by women. Books about racism, sexuality, gender, and history. PEN America defines a school book ban as any action taken against a book based on its content and as a result of parent or community challenges, administrative decisions, or in response to direct or threatened action by lawmakers or other governmental officials that leads to a previously accessible book being either completely removed from availability to students or where access to a book is restricted or diminished. Diminished access is a form of censorship and has educational implications that extend beyond a title's removal. It is important to recognize that books available in schools, whether in a school, classroom, or library, or as a part of a curriculum, were selected by librarians and educators as part of the educational offerings to students. Book bans occur when those choices are overridden by school boards, administrators, teachers, or politicians on the basis of a particular book's content. A book ban occurs when an objection to the content of a specific book or type of book leads to that volume being withdrawn either fully or partially from availability, or when a blanket prohibition or absolute restriction is placed on a particular title within a school or a district. School book bans take varied forms and can include prohibitions on books in libraries or classrooms, as well as a range of other restrictions, some of which may be temporary. In some cases, books are removed from shelves for review, but not returned for weeks or months. If students cannot access the book, that is a ban. Book removals that follow established processes may still be improperly target books on the basis of content pertaining to race, gender, or sexual orientation, invoking concerns of equal protection in education. So I'm just going to list the 27 books that I have read for this challenge in the last 9 months. These are books that have been challenged and subjected to restrictions and bannings. I'm not going to discuss each book because I've already done that in other videos. I'm not going to go into the whole book banning history. I've done that in videos that are still on my channel. I don't have physical copies for all 27. Some were young adult novels or just other titles that I figure I probably won't revisit, and I have donated all of those to my public library. But I will show the books that are a part of my personal collection. The first book that I ever discussed on the channel and for which I was badly trolled was Khaled Hosseini's The Kite Runner. and this was a novel that I taught for at least the last 15 years of my career. The second book that I discussed on the channel was Toni Morrison's Beloved, which won the Pulitzer Prize, frequently banned book. The next book that I discussed was Elizabeth Acevedo's The Poet X, and this is a National Book Award winner. I discussed the YA novel by Nick Stone, Dear Martin, about a young man who aspires to be like Martin Luther King. I read all 5 volumes of Alice Osman's Heartstopper series. I purchased them all, I read them all, I reviewed them on the channel, and I have donated those to my public library. Next, I read and reviewed Alice Walker's The Color Purple. I read and reviewed Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, a frequently banned book, which is a book about book banning. It's about a society that doesn't allow people to have books anymore, frequently banned to this day. I also did a video on Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale, and her graphic novel, also recently made on The Handmaid's Tale, and this is on many, many lists, often more frequently even than the novel itself. I next read a young adult novel by Melinda Lowe, Last Night at the Telegraph Club, which deals with LGBTQ issues, and I reviewed that on the channel, and I have donated that to my public library. Next up was Stephen King's first published novel, Carrie. This is on many, many lists still to this day. I reread this. I first read it 50 years ago when it was first published, and I reread it for Horror Mayhem, and I reviewed it on the channel. Another book that I just recently talked about on the channel, which was a very, very popular book among my students. This was a novel that we taught in contemporary fiction, Stephen King's The Green Mile, also on both the library, the PEN America and the American Library Association's lists. Frequently banned up until the late 1950s, actually. And this was, I think, actually banned by the Catholic Church, Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, which I talked about extensively during the spring when I was reading this with Classics and Company. And then another classic banned, actually, in many, many countries when it was first published, James Joyce's Ulysses, which I reread for the 3rd time this summer with the group now known as the Ulysses Six. I read a middle grade book called Ban This Book by Alan Gratz, and that's a book about an elementary school aged young lady who decides to fight book banning when she goes to the library and can't find the copy of her favorite book because it's been pulled from the shelves. So this is a book about how little kids fought book banning, and that book itself has now been banned from many school districts across the country. I read this summer with, for Faulkner in August, William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying, and this is also on both lists. I read Judy Blume's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Judy Blume, many of her books are on both lists from the American Library Association and PEN America. She is being frequently targeted, and this is really a young adult novel. Most young girls, I think, find this book around, I don't know, grade 6, 7, 8, probably sixth or seventh grade. We read with the I'm with the Band group, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Her entire series, most of her books are on both of these lists. And she's being particularly targeted right now by the entire state of Utah. Sandra Cisneros, The House on Mango Street. Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me, because it talks about race in America. Another book that we read with the I'm with the Band book club, Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake. And I talked about this extensively on the channel. A novel that I taught for many years, Snow Falling on Cedars by David Guterson. And the book that we most recently read with the I'm with the Band book club, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, another National Book Award winner. And this is a YA book. So those are the 27 titles that I have read for the Read 24 in 2024 Banned Book Challenge. On to 2025 and the reading of more challenged and banned books. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.